Lightborn, I think if you, do you have an iPhone? No? I was able to download that picture into my photos and then add it on the plus in the background. And that's how I was able to do that.
All right. Good night, everybody. Good night. Welcome to Fatherhood Talks. Woo. I hope everyone might be a little bit, some of you might be tired from last night. Mainly the fathers. I seen a lot of fathers last night as I was handing out trick-or-treat candy to the children in the neighborhood where I was. A lot of fathers with their kids. So I was very inspired. A lot of fathers out, really celebrating that time with their kids. I won't say so much what the holiday is, but just as an opportunity for the family to do something together. I think that's a big thing. You see the fathers, the mothers, the kids all out, despite that fathers don't know that's probably gonna cost them some dental checks later if they took too much of that stuff. But we want to welcome you again tonight to Fatherhood Talks. You can catch us here every Tuesday. Make sure you can like, share, subscribe, hit the bell so you can know when we're on, so you can get get some of this good conversation we're going to have. We're starting tonight. We're going to be doing part 2 of our conversation, the talk. Last week was the talk that we need to have to our young children. Now, this is the other talk, the birds and the bees. And it should be very interesting, the conversation to hear what some of the fathers have begun to do, what they have done in the past, and what you hopefully can learn some skills to get yourself ready for this talk that we must have with our children. We want them to be prepared in this next century that's happening, where sexuality is almost first forward, as I would say. So definitely want to make sure our kids are doing the right thing. I'm Ryan Christopher Osborne Williams. I'm a father of a daughter, and I'll let the rest of the guys on the panel introduce themselves and maybe their children.
Gene Robert Menard, father of 2 young adults, 1 boy, 1 girl, or 1 young man, 1 young woman. Good evening, everyone.
Adams, father of 3, 1 grown daughter, 2 boys, and a grandson.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Lionel Lightborn. I am the father to a tribe of 7 and 1 granddaughter.
Just to say, I know that Donald Jones is on here. He said that he's not going to be able to speak. He's having trouble with the mic, but I know he's a divorcing father of, I believe,
2,
3, 2 divorcing
2.
father 2.
Travis Jones, a father of 4, stepfather to 2, 18 all the way to 9.
Elder Thomas Alberry, father of 2 grown kids, and I have 7 grands, 2 boys, 3, 4, 5 girls. Good to be here.
I'm Justin Gibbs, father of 5. I have an 11-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old daughter, and a 9-month-old daughter.
I think I'm the last one. John Alexander Ramirez. I am a father, still married to my wife and 2 children, a 7-year-old son and a 3-year-old son. Good evening.
My name is Ed Tenney. I have a combined family of 6 with 3 biologicals and 3 stepkids. I have 1 granddaughter, and that's it.
Hello, fathers. My name is Rohan Rodok. I have 2 daughters. I'm a divorced dad, but not divorced from the children. And I'm glad to be on the program to share the wisdom amongst other fathers.
Did we get you, Jay, Dr. Doom?
Yeah, just checking in now. Just got in from the plantation. It's Dr. Doom, father to a blended family of 8 with grandbaby boy. Ready to get it in this evening.
All right, ready to get it in this evening. Okay, all right. So with that being said, well, he say ready to get it in this evening, so we might well get right to the nitty gritty. We talked a little bit last week about having to talk with our children about being young Black and brown children in this world we live in, and what did that mean for us to understand how we would operate to our children. But the other conversation that we do need to have, I think sometimes, and I'm going to say this because I heard a lady say this morning, I was taking a shower, and a lady was talking about her daughter being with a 30-year-old man. She was saying her daughter was 17. He was with a 30-year-old man. And then as the story called on, there's a subtitle. As it went on, I realized that the daughter already had 2 kids. And she was seeing how her and the daughter had such a good relationship, and the husband, the daughter's dad was there, but the daughter had a baby at 14. But when the interviewer asked her how did the daughter get pregnant, how to get a relationship, she gave a whole bunch of stories, and then the video cut off. You know how they do on the video. They don't ever let you see the whole thing. And I thought to myself, the lady was saying how much, the mother was saying how much a good relationship her and her husband had with the daughter. But what was the relationship you had when you talking about XEX? When you talking about what to do and how not to do and what needs to happen? Because you can have all the conversations you want, but if it's not pertinent, it's like the conversation we have at the water cooler at the job with the people. We're supposed to be talking about how we're gonna fix these problems at our job, and people readily tell me about what was on The Walking Dead. I'm saying, I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna, hey, Rick Grimes was doing it, and I'm like, hey, what? So we have a lot of conversations, but it's not the conversations that's useful. So definitely, I want to hear from the dads tonight. How have you initiated these conversations? And what did those conversations look like? How did you feel having those conversations? What would you do? Did you do it yourself? Did you do it with your partner or with the children's mother? How did you kind of start these conversations, just introducing the idea of sexuality? Because when we, a part of this conversation of sexuality also is pertinent for as I would say, in many instances, prevention for sexual abuse, depending on how early we start with our children. So let me hear what some of the dads have to say.
And let me throw an extra question on there also. Yeah. How does the conversation, and it will differ, talking to your sons versus talking to your daughters? Because I know, and I'm just gonna throw the caveat out there, I know that when you're talking to your daughters, it's more like you better not be and don't come home pregnant, versus talking to your sons on the more preventative side of protection. So, you know, just throw that caveat in the lining of questions that Ron threw out there.
Well, I'll get it started. How is that? The topic, how to talk about the birds and bees. I always say this to fathers. If you're watching the television and seeing someone getting personal, and you decide to change the channel in front of your child, it's about that time to start talking. It's about that time to talk about, again, the birds and the bees, why it's on television, why people are being affectionate. And to be honest, it's a tough one. I would say, have the child talk to you first. You will be very surprised what these children know today. Have them speak to you, have them open the conversation, because they're going to talk about sex at some point, and hear what they have to say and then respond. Because, you know, there's the internet is filled with videos and script, but it's not necessarily wise stuff that they're showing on the internet. And that's where fathers and mothers comes in to put away the things that we see on video and put it into reality. The reality is people reprocreate. The birds and the bees do it and humans do it. But unfortunately, humans use it to do much more than just reprocreate. And that is a part you need to explain, along with other STDs and other things, responsibilities that come with having sexual relationship. Both I would say, how would I say it? Gay, bisexual, and the other descriptions that are out there today. It still boils down to sex at the end of the day, and you may have to go into those deep conversations and explain to these children what we're facing today. But I say, have the discussion as quickly as possible and just do the best you can, and just listen to your children, and you can learn. That's my thought.
All right, I'll chime in next. I think when it comes to talking to our children about sexuality, and the responsibilities of and accountabilities of sexuality, we can first start by not calling it the birds and the bees. Because I think sometimes we convolute a lot of things. We may convey a lot of misinformation or at best a misinterpretation on how to really convey something or a piece of information that's a necessity for their lives. And so if we're I guess if we're conveying it on a more fantasy type base or with a fantasy type title as opposed to reality title, and calling penises peepees, vaginas goo-goos and all that other stuff, and then our kids are already at a disadvantage because if we're afraid to use the correct terminology for our sexuality, then we're not equipped to have the conversation in the first place. But being that as it may, stop calling the birds and the bees first. That's the first thing you need to stop doing. And secondly, if you're going to start with somebody, start with yourself. And so kids are more, and people in general, not just children, but people are more receptive. You understand? When you can start with your own experiences when it comes to a very uncomfortable title. And so when you can make yourself, put yourself as the first example and let them see you in the situation, then it can provide the inclusivity that's needed to really effectively have that conversation, or an equitable conversation with your children. But again, first thing is stop calling it by, using the fantasy terminologies, because if you start with fantasy, you end with fantasy. And so we need to be more realistic when it comes to approaching the conversation. And secondly, start with self as it pertains to, when it comes to the inclusivity of the conversation, and letting people know that, letting the kids know that it's just not a you thing, but it's a you and I thing. And I'm just trying to do a transference as opposed to a criticism.
Well, some Lionel, and I think this is really important, even how important it is. You know, the other day was, I think the day is Tuesday, so it was Friday in my class. One of the young ladies, this is high school, these high school students, the young lady asked me in front of the class, because the students feel very comfortable with me about a lot of things. Said, Professor, when should a person lose their virginity? And I think for some of the people in the class, they was ready for me to like blush and say, "Oh well, honey, we get." I was ready. I said, "Well, let's talk about what it is to lose your virginity and how that they give you some answers." And I talked a little bit about being mature, but first thing I thought about is the first thing explaining to them as these young teenagers who are emerging into young adulthood. You have to think about consent, because some of you may decide to get involved with some of these other young people and they don't have consent. They might think they have consent to be sexually active with you, but they don't have consent. So their parents still own the consent of them. A lot of people get that confused and say, what you talking about? No, the parents are still parents. They're still responsible when a kid is a minor. And so you can find yourself, seeing BSO knock at your door, male or female, if you involve yourself with somebody who can't consent. So just those kind of comments. But I, as we're having this conversation today, I thought about that this young lady is about to leave and go to college, and no one has even talked to her, or expressed to her a conversation about when is it okay to lose a virginity. And
I'm sorry, Ron. I just want to say, because I want to connect what you say, because that's what I want to say, but I want to hear what you have to say first, because I, not one, two, but all four of my older kids, because I gave them the talk, or tried to give them my sort of that talk about, the birds and the bees. And they asked that same question, and that did kind of, stump me as a father, because it's, that doesn't run in my mind like that. And the first, me being the parent, the first thing that come out my mouth is, well, not right now. You know what I'm saying? And I understand that's not a good answer to give to kids, because kids don't understand not right now. You know what I'm saying? But basically I'm trying to explain, like, okay, like you gotta break that down to us adults too, because we don't know when there's a good time or whatever. What should we have actually said? And I heard what you said, like what we should say, but is that the right type of terminology to explain that, man? I'm just saying, like, because I mean,
what
they want to know, they want to know hard facts.
Well, Travis, first, and I think this is the most important. People have to discuss with their children what their values is in their home. Mm-hmm. That's first. So whatever your values is for what should happen, that's the first thing you want to express to express to them. But you also want to be, how do I say it? You want to be able to hear them, because they might say, "Well, I think it should be okay," and then that's how you have this dialogue for them to get to understand. Because a lot of parents do a shutdown, like it's immediate shutdown. No, you're not going to do that. You won't do that. Blah, 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 blah. And then also make it consequential, that if you do this, there's going to be some consequence. And I think we sometimes forget that when we put people in those ultimatums, most of the time they take the ultimatum. Even if they don't want to, they take the ultimatum and then, say, "Oh, well, what have you." Whereas if you would have been more communicative with them, and I think have more communication about what it means and what really discussing that, again, remember this developmental stage of life is when this is really, listen, you can't just sit here and pretend like your son is not getting a hard on, your daughter's not getting sexually aroused, and they may be having orgasms, natural orgasms without any sexual things, just because their body's going through that puberty stage, and you're gonna tell them don't do this and don't do that. that's when the as I say, the bad guys get to tell them what they could and should be doing, and it feels good to them without your guidance, you know. And some people say, "Oh, that sounds a little creepy." I know people say it sounds creepy, but we have to also understand our children's sexuality starts in utero. Their sexuality starts when they're inside the mother. Their sexuality doesn't just start when, you know, the stage of development is oral, anal, what else it is, Gene? Fat, you know, fat. These are the stages of development for these children. You know, so that those things are all interrelated to some kind of sexual pleasure and mindset. And some people say, that don't sound right. Some of that sounds like child abuse. But you have to really learn. And I think it goes really back to what Lionel said is, and we have to use the right terminology. Biologically, we're talking biology. Then speak it in biology, and your kids will understand it in biology. If you talk it in PP and sugar box, yo, somebody who want to get, yeah, everybody want to get in the sugar boxes. It's sweet inside there. That's not what you want your kids to think about. Their reproduction organs or their sexual organs. That there's some kind of, you know, something special or sweet. There's something that is very serious. And again, it really depends on your values, I think, first. And then you begin to break down the different aspects of, because they will begin to tell you, because we got to also remember that, listen, this society, we on this social media right now, we're getting the message we can get out, but it's other people right now sending our kids quadruple messages compared to what we talking about, trying to talk to their parents. And they listening. And those little bites that they get on TikTok and Instagram, they got it all allegedly figured out.
So Ron, my experience was when my boys were going through, my wife at the time, she took care of my daughter, and I trusted her completely with the talk, and that went better than expected for her. With my boys, when they started asking questions that kind of made me uncomfortable at 8 years old, 7 years old, I'm like, man, I need to have a discussion with them, because if I don't talk to them, the streets are sure going to try and educate them. Mm-hmm. And this is before the advent of social media, Facebook, Instagram, and all that other kind of stuff. So fortunately, I was able to find this book that it was like a 3D pop-up book. And I was able to sit down with the boys and mechanically explain to them the functionality of sex and intercourse. And that book was extremely helpful, because it was basically a pictogram in 3D that helped me walk through the mechanics of it. But what looking back on it now, I wish I was able to discuss it when they were more mentally mature, because there's a lot of emotional stuff that goes along with intercourse that I don't know if they were really understood the connectedness that goes on between a man and a woman with regards to intercourse. So bottom line is, I felt forced to have the talk, because I felt like I needed to intervene or interject before the streets got to them with that education. And then I was able to also color everything from a biblical, spiritual perspective, which um, for me, helped me with my sanity, I guess, in trying to talk to them. My question is, I don't have a clue on how you would talk to kids nowadays because they are inundated with so much stuff at such a young age that when they're in the public arena, the public social arena, man, to me, it would be really difficult to fight against all of the stereotypes that goes with uh, the talk, especially when you got 1,000 genders, being discussed now. So for you gentlemen that have young kids, I would be interested to hear your experience on having to talk in today's time, because to me it would be extremely difficult to have the talk.
I'll be honest with you. The that the talk is it's not, a lot of people want to pinpoint an age to the talk, right? What age should I start having this conversation? There's no correct age to start having the conversation, because it's supposed to be a continuous evolving conversation, right? So you start young, like Lightborn was saying, you're going to start young and start talking to them about their body parts and naming body parts and understanding, because what happens is, and I know Ronnie alluded to this earlier, you're doing that so that if, God forbid, something would have ever happened, they can talk to you intelligently about what happened and who touched them and where they touched them, right? So you start off teaching them that. As they get older and hormones start to kick in, you have another talk with them. I know your body's changing. I know you're feeling these type of feelings. Validate those feelings for them, right? And then when they get to an even older age, now you start having another conversation. Hey, you're getting to the age where a lot of kids your age, if not already, are sexually active. Have you thought about it? What's your thoughts on it? Because no matter how much, and I don't want to slight anybody, but no matter how much you talk religiously to somebody, right? You impose values. They're still humans who are going to make their own judgment on what they think is good for them. We can try to be mean, we can try to impose, we can say you better not, but think of how many times your parents told you you better not, and you went ahead and did it anyway. So you have to give them that, you have to have that mind frame when you talk to them. So I'm going to talk to you because I hope you don't do it prematurely. I can tell you with my son, I had when recently he turned 19, I had another conversation with him. And I said, look, I know now the world is telling you you're an adult, but I'm still paying your bills, which makes you a child to me. You see what I'm saying? So you should, in your mind, understand that you're still in the relationship of a child, because you are not paying anything for yourself. You're not living on your own. You're not paying your own bills. You're not paying for your own school. All that stuff is still being done for you, right? So when it comes to going out there and having relationships, I want you to really think about, because any woman that you sleep with could be a potential mother to your child. And so are you ready to give up? And this is just how I said it. Are you ready to give up the free lifestyle to go into one that you now have to pay for? And so think about that when you start thinking about the relationships that you have. And right now, I know he's in a steady relationship with one person. But even with that, I told him, you need to even think about that with that person. Because what's going to happen is, if you do decide, or when you decide to have a sexual relationship with her, hopefully it's after you propose and get married to her, But if something happens and it happens sooner, then you have to think about the cost, because kids are not free. And it's going to drastically, and I don't want to put a bummer on it, but I told them it's going to change your life, because you have to go from now someone who's dependent to someone who's being depended on. And it changes the dynamics and it changes your world. So, yeah.
Gene, just to even put some pinpoint, because we got this idea, and I'm gonna say this, Eddie, sometimes we got the idea that the kids are really out here doing it up, right? But they're doing it up because we're not engaged with them. They're doing it up because all the messages they're learning is from Utopia, the Utopia show. Some people on TikTok talking about certain things in little small chat groups. Where if we were the centerpiece, as we should be in their lives, we could talk to them about those things, and they could even learn from us. Listen, the reason why I didn't have a child, and probably may have been later, until I was 40 years old, it wasn't by accident, because I was digging a lot of holes. But it was very clear that my mother and my father, who were teenage parents, who also always kind of said you made that mention of that. It was always a mention. So I consciously recognized that I didn't want to be them, because what it meant is that we weren't together. We weren't a family because they were teenagers. So thinking of these things of waiting, well, it didn't do no good anyway.
I differ, but continue.
Yeah, well, but it's just sometimes you think you're gonna be Oedipus Rex, and the same thing happened. Don't matter. Oedipus Rex. You know what I'm talking about. Think gonna be Oedipus Rex, and it doesn't matter. You're still gonna get what you're gonna get. You find yourself still in that, but at least you understand and have understanding. But that understanding came from me very young, and my whole young adulthood, teenage, college, all that time, I was very precautious and mindful that I didn't want to be a teenage father like my father.
Ron, I'm glad you brought that up. He mentioned about how his parents. Ron mentioned about his parents gave him the instructions and told him of what occurred before he was born. And again, I want to highlight what Menard said. There is different areas of birds and the bees that need to be discussed. And if you notice, Ron mentioned that as he reaches a certain age, he still, let's say, step off the fence, so to speak. So he still had to make try and cross a bridge, if you want to use that for a better word. So it's I like what Bernard said. It's a continuum. It is 15, 20, 25, and it's a continuum. And as Eddie mentioned, now we have what? We have like 12 different cards on the table. How do you explain it when there's different words that are being attached to sexuality, if I'm right, right? There are different words today. And how do you discuss each one? I would say, if a father here, if you're not in tune with all of these terms, there are you can go online. Sometimes they will assist you with the terms, and Planned Parenthood have classes. Planned Parenthood have classes regarding sexuality and the birds and the bees, so to speak. So there is help out there that can assist you to have those deep conversations.
You're muted, Ron.
I also think that that first of all, for us as parents, we need to work on a relationship with our kids. That they will feel easier to come and talk to us, and we can talk to them. And as it goes on, and when they have that trust in you, then they can come and tell you, like we're saying about, touching the body and all that. But you have to build that relationship in different stages, and that so that your kids feel that they can come to you and talk to you about anything, and you're gonna listen.
And it's not gonna be punitive. See,
Right.
the problem is we lose some of our communication with our kids because a lot of our communication is punitive. If they tell us something, we're gonna beat them. Then we're gonna say, I don't know why this happened to you. Then we beat them. Then we want to go, but we have to be a little bit more open and mindful that, no one's gonna tell you, listen, as a therapist, I see couples all the time. Women say, why you lied? Why did this man lie to me? Why? And after the session, that she say, he could have just told me the truth if he knew that. And I always say, because he didn't believe that. He learned that if he told you the truth, it would be punitive. So that's why he didn't tell you what he really wanted from you or what he really wanted to be involved with you. He had already been conditioned that if I tell a lie and you like my lie, then I can just try to hopefully survive. And that's how our kids are. It starts in childhood. So when we're thinking about our children's sexual health, we have to be very open and be willing to let them know that they can come to us and talk to us about whatever it is, and it's not going to be punitive. Right. It's going to be open, loving, and let's see what we can do to solve whatever issue you are having as a parent.
Yes.
Ron, I want to say something that Menard mentioned. He mentioned about, do you have different cultures? And some folks will tell their children, don't have sex until you're married. It's said every day. When I get married, I'll have sex. But in reality, we have to ask ourselves these questions as men. Does our children wait to have sex when they're married?
Yeah, well, I agree. I believe they do. If these kids learn, if that's their learned behavior, they have a mother and father who raised them and they believe that, that's their reality. That's their learned behavior. The problem is when you're sitting in a home with multiple children already and you're telling your kid not to have sex until they get married. It's not a learned behavior for them. The learned behavior is, if it's okay for you, it'd be okay for me. Kids, listen, we want to make our kids to be so rebellious, but our kids are very conformist. How do you think that people are able to do the things and abuse them and do stuff to them? Because they're very conformist. We have to learn the way to come to our kids like the bad people be coming to our kids. And I say that very often because working in human trafficking, you say, well, how do these girls go out here and how do people get themselves human trafficked? Because this person who's human trafficking coming to them in a completely different way than their biological parents and the people who say they love them. But these people are doing some magical thing to show them that they love them, that they're not even willing to call. If the police catch them, they say ain't nothing and come right back out and be with them again. There's something that we're missing sometimes as parents that we got to get that. And I think it's that, what's the thing Lana always tell us when we go talk to the mothers? We need to have that one, man, Lana, what is it? You say when we talking to the moms about
finesse.
Stuff, we need to have a finesse. We got to be finesseful parents, not Rod parents, because Rod lead me to run. Finesse mean me to open my ear a little bit and say, what you saying, Mom? What you saying, Dad?
But you know what? I realized, and we just talking about this, having this conversation, how can you talk about intimacy without being intimate? And I think that's the disconnect between parents conveying this to children, because I don't think parents want to think about their kids having sex or get a visual of their kids having sex no more than the children want to get a visual of their parents having sex. And it's true. And I think there's something that's so instinctive and deeply psychological about thinking that your children will even go there, just as your kids think it's just as dysfunctional, even though that's how they got here. But it's just something a little icky about children thinking about their parents having sex, even though it's a normal thing. And so I think that may be the disconnect, because there's a lot of misinformation on intimacy as a whole. And I think intimacy as a whole has been hijacked. I think intimacy as a whole has been marginalized in certain areas, in certain communities. And I think intimacy as a whole has been fantasized in certain communities. So it can be marginalized in your poor to middle class communities, but upper middle class to upper class community, or high, whatever, rich communities or wealthy communities, then it's more fantasized, which is where you start to see it conveyed through various TV shows or teen or adolescent TV shows about adolescent children and adolescent sexual behaviors or adolescent relationships of intimacy between adolescents and more affluent situations. So it's more socially acceptable to be of a certain class and indulge in those risky sexual behaviors. And when it becomes a social norm, and we have another, I don't want to say, I know the misinformation, but it becomes almost like a moral disability or something like that, for the lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And so now you're competing against something. You have the reality, right? Competing against what is portrayed on TV, this and that, socially acceptable. And I'm gonna say that to say it like this, because even adults have the same problem. And what I found out, I didn't find this out until I was an adult, that most women, I'm talking about responsible, in some cases educated women, were having sex for years without coming to a satisfaction or a satisfactory outcome. You understand? And these are grown, educated, responsible women. And so if women have a stigma or a certain or succumb to a certain, I want to settle. That's the word I'm looking for. If they can settle, right, for enjoying something but not enjoying it, right? And that's grown, educated, responsible women will go years faking orgasm and knowing that they never really enjoyed the intimacy with the man or the men they were with. Imagine our children. You understand? So I can't be too hard on children if adults are suffering from the very same thing. And so that's what makes this conversation evolving, and it's going to evolve at every level, because you had one woman to admit it, and once one woman admitted about not having an orgasm during sex most of the time, if not any time, then it took off like the Me Too movement, where women explained that they were sexually violated and for people that you would never really respect, be it in their families or outside their families, but close to them. And so I think this conversation is a triage, right? And it's a triage conversation, because you got to have that conversation on so many different levels. You got to have it on the family aspect. Yes, you got to have it on from a spiritual aspect. You got to have it from a social aspect, and you got to have it from an economic aspect. And because you economically oppress yourself to be dissatisfied, you understand? In order to remain satisfied at the economic status that you are. And so I think it's so many different layers to peel back on this particular discussion, that it can only start with the kids, but I think it would evolve all the way to the grave.
Hey, Lionel, guess what? Hey, little Lionel, guess what? I think Mommy and Daddy was fighting last night. So I heard the noise that coming through the door, and Mommy would say something, and Daddy would say, I think they were fighting. What were they doing, Lionel?
You were fighting.
I'm sorry, just that those kind of thoughts come to my mind too, because I had that happen.
Well, that's another, and you know what? It's amazing you brought that up, because that's something that we would actually have to be considerate of. You understand? I mean, in our manhood, machismo mind or mentality, it sounds like a really good thing. I'm like, yeah, when you're speaking and conveying it to men, but it becomes a traumatic thing when children hear it. And so how do you conduct yourself sexually or intimately when in the confines of your home and children are there? And I don't think I've ever heard that conversation before or conveyed or have, be it the navigation, the wrongs and the rights on how to actually, what audio to keep your sexual activities at when your children in the house.
Well, I'm gonna take it back a little bit because, I think that when you're discussing this, sometimes, and something that Lionel said sparked this thought process in me. Sometimes mom and dad are not even on the same wavelength when it comes to having a conversation about this. You can be at two polar opposite ends, and that's where the first part is, right? Because whether you're living together, married, or you're parenting separate, you're both going to have your own idea on what should be said, how it should be said, who should have the conversation, and how everything should be presented, right? And so when you both can't agree on that level, on what it is that I'm going to tell these kids, that stifles the whole conversation of ever being had. Because now you're like, look, I don't want you to talk to them. And you're like, I don't want you to talk to them. So then no one talks to them. I know there was a point.
Yeah, somebody talk to him, Gene.
Someone's going to talk to him.
Talk to him out in the streets.
I'm going to tell you this. I remember, because, age, taboo, your parents didn't talk to you about sex. What happens that when that science form came home, that they were going to talk about sex in class, all the parents signed it and said, leave it to the school, right? So now you're learning about reproductive drive in school and you're learning all this stuff in school, but never at home. It's always was taboo. No, that's something that you're going to learn in school. I think bringing it down, because like it was a little too earlier, the times are changing. A lot of things are changing, especially where people are finding their education. It has to start within the home now. You can't wait till that form that says, I want my kid to sit in the classroom. And they're still doing it till this day. When it was time for my son, he had to sign a field trip form. And I was like, okay. And then he was like, yeah, some kids' parents don't want them to learn it in school. And I'm like, well, I hope they talk about it at home because they're going to learn it from somewhere. And so for me, it was a twofold front. You're going to learn it in school, but you're also going to learn it at home. And that was something that, the conversation didn't start with just me and him. It started with the parents and worked its way down to the kids, because we had to be on the same accord in order for it to be an effective communication. Because if you guys aren't on the same page, and this happens a lot with a lot of things, that if parents aren't on the same page with this conversation, one parent is telling you how detrimental it is, while the other parent is telling you, oh, I remember when I was young. What's that Betty White song? Can you remember back to that first time? First time you made love?
Ain't no game.
So, depending on how one parent's looking at it, the other parent's looking at it, you can send some conflicted messages.
Lionel, Bernard, I like that. And here's what I'm going to speak as on behalf of a separated father or divorced father. If one parent is saying, don't talk to no boys, do not engage, I want father to keep this in mind. When you have your children, and let's say your children is not under your home, it is important that you be a part of your children's life. Because if one parent is in control of the children, where it's a single family home, and the other father is maybe in a different location or local, you can have that conversation too. So you both may not agree, and in terms of how sexuality, but you as a parent and your daughter or your son may ask you, Dad, what's your thought? You can speak. So I just want to put that out there for fathers who are not present in their children's life, but whenever you get a chance, be there. Because remember, that child wants to know the information, and the first person they want to know it from is their daddy and their mommy.
Now we can't confuse, and I think we don't want to convolute this conversation or confuse this conversation um, with sexuality being intimacy. And I think that's where we confuse a lot of the actions of our children.
Right.
Sexuality is one thing, intimacy is another. And so back to that song that J. Rob just mentioned, no pain, no gain, is very right. That's exactly what it is. That was the outcome. And so you got to understand that intimacy could be traumatic. And I don't think we have even scratched the surface on the trauma that comes along with intimacy for the first time. And I think if we was even open up Pandora's box about that particular conversation about the trauma that comes along with intimacy for the first time, it'll probably be more devastating for women than it was for men. And most women, or most women and females, let's just put females in general, first time may have been more traumatizing because number one, they did it just to get along. They did it just to stay with the guy. They did it because they thought the guy did it, loved them, or they did it because somebody made them do it. And in most time, this is where the Me Too movement came out. And so this is what I'm talking about with the sexuality versus the intimacy. When the Me Too movement came out, there's a lot of women said they've been sexually violated. And I'm not sure if the studies even record, was that their first time? And then for females, their first time may have been sexual violation before it was anything else. So now imagine being that and going through relationships and never really addressing your first time being a sexual violation as opposed to the sexual or intimate recreation that you're taking part of. And so you're constantly victimized. And this is why I tend to empathize with not only women, but I'm just call women in general, females in general, my daughters. And because if I hadn't heard the stories, I couldn't, and because it wasn't my experience, I couldn't really think deeper, number one, differently now first, forget deeper, but differently now first as a man, and then go deeper to ask the conversation now, what was that like? And how is it now? Which might explain my earlier comment about, well, this may explain why they can't come to a satisfied outcome if the majority of their sexual encounters were more traumatizing than satisfying. If that makes any sense.
Well, Lana, I'm gonna take the other side of the street on that. And because as you begin to speak on this side of the street, the other side of the street ain't no better. And I think the other side of the street just has another outcome where people are us men who are little boys who had no idea about any sexuality, but someone had, what I would say, not forced, but coerced. See, there's many women are forced into sex. Young men are coerced into sex by maybe not by even the person they're going to have sex with. So the coercing, and then that becomes their teaching and their learning of how to be involved. Intimacy, this is how they learn sex, this is how they learn intimacy, by this coercing action. So this is why they can't never have a significant relationship with a woman, because they're only continuing this thing of, oh, this is an object, I'm gonna just pump into, pound town, and then I'm gonna think because I had an orgasm, it was good. And it wasn't good for you. Because if it was good, you wouldn't have to go get another one and another one and another. Listen, when we find something that we like to eat, we don't say, shit, I put this on and go get some other food. No, we keep on eating that same thing over and over and over. That's because we know what we want. We know what we like. And I think that's the dysfunction we have a lot of times on both sides of that street, is that women are many times, and I agree, have been forced into sex, and these young men have been coerced into sex. Differently, because they could have said, no, I don't want to do it, but they also could have then been told that there is something other than being a man by not wanting to do it. But if your daddy told you, wait to get with the woman you want to marry, you say, I don't care what you say, because my daddy told me that I don't need to have sex with nobody until I want to love them and be married to them. You can tell that person, you can call them all kinds of sister, you call whatever you want to call them. It won't matter, because you know who matter first? My daddy. And that's one of the factors we have to remember, that our importance of our kids not being peer pressured, coerced, or anything else has to do with us being and saying, that's not what, you don't need them, because I'm all you really need.
Well, Ron, I like that, Ron. Again, being involved in your child's life goes a far way. It goes all the way to the end. And I support that, Ron, 100%. And Lionel, just to add to that real quick, Lionel, I have a friend, and she was somewhat, I believe, traumatized at an early age, and I was very frightened when that lady in her late 40s told me I never enjoyed sex. From the first time I had sex as a child to present, you look at her, she looks attractive, she dressed real nice, and for her to come out and say that to me, I tell you, I was taken aback for her to say it in such a way all these years. So you do have a point here.
Well, you know, I was thinking, I'm going to tell you what made me, just something about, I'm going to say marriage for me, but it's something about staying in a relationship long enough to, first of all, learn about your woman in order to learn about women. I had to learn about my woman before I understood or got real education about women. My wife was one of those victims too. I mean, molested at a very early age. Molested at somebody that was very trustworthy in their family, to the point that her goddaddy, who was a complete loose cannon, her mom and her godmother had to really discuss whether to tell him or not, right? For the sake of losing him, because he would have, factually and genuinely killed that guy. There was nothing for him to do that. That was his makeup. That was a goddad. I met him before he passed away. I could validate that's his makeup. And so even though as painful as it was for her mother to find that out and to restrain herself for her not to, because she had to weigh it. You understand? And that's the difference between men and women. Women know how to, and I guess has been so conditioned over time and traumatized over time that the wisdom is heightened when it comes to weighing everything to actually address a situation that may have happened, or a crisis or a violation that may have happened to their child. And so they have to weigh their availability to their child. They weigh it out. As we told the men, we're like, we're gonna do the time. You understand? Without realizing that, man, if I kill this dude and I'm gone, then would it put my child at more risk of being even sexually violated by other dudes? Because I can't kill everybody. Understand? And so those two women, in their infinite wisdom, had to come together and figure out how can we navigate this crisis without telling her godfather, who would have very well killed this guy. Nevertheless, they opt not to tell him. My wife was still traumatized by it. But the thing about it, over time, with the conditioning and the loving and the reinstilling of virtue into my wife through her mother and other family members and support, this is why it's very good to have a support base, not just within your families, but within your community and people you surround yourself with. They was able to reinstill into her virtue, right? To not let that incident break her beyond repair. And as such, I got me an awesome wife who is stronger coming out of that than she was going in as a child. And so, again, it's a very, very personal, deep conversation for me that I could not understand clearly without staying in a relationship or sacrificial relationship where I sacrifice just as much, because men, for the most part, when we're in a relationship, there's no real sacrifice when it comes to intimacy. And what I mean is like real sacrifice. We don't sacrifice long enough to really understand the opposite sex, because we got so many options. And so when the sacrifice seems to be hard, then we can just trade up and trade off. You understand? Not really ever learning anything about women we have been involved with for a lifetime. And so these are the different things and ramifications, psychological ramifications that we may understand or just choose to keep evading over time.
Point taken.
Where's Castro? He too quiet tonight. He got me tripping. Castro.
I was just thinking there's nothing that I can say after what you just said that would make anything like no. Like, thank you for what you just shared and your vulnerability, and there's power in you sharing that testament, and I appreciate you doing that. I'm listening because I'm a father of 3 young boys. I'm sorry, 2 young boys, a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old, and we're not there with the talk. I don't talk about birds and bees. My wife's been calling them penises since they could remember. So I know that she does reference to the anatomically correct portion of it. My association with sex was not cool. You know, not being circumcised is a different monster of losing your virginity, right? And not understanding what that is was like, whoa, what just happened here? So I appreciate that topic of what that looks like. And then now as an adult with my wife, really what is intimacy, right? Into you, I see, right? Into me, I see. Like it's a different monster. We ain't out here just humping like rabbits or trying to procreate, right? We're really just here trying to build something else. So I'm just taking notes today. Just really, everything's already been said. There's nothing of value that I believe I can bring just listening. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Because I don't, you know, for me, sex was about conquer. It was about conquest. It was about whose daughter or granddaughter or anybody am I, right at the end of the day. And it was nothing more than that. And it was saddening because I think somebody said it earlier. As boys, we get pushed into that. We get pushed into going out here having sex, and it's not even something that we really even know or understand, right? Or just even like I had to tell one of my frat brothers, he had condoms in his wallet. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, you better off going raw dog than using that old condom, right? So just the lack of wisdom in how as men to men we talk to each other. We don't support healthy sexual habits. We support bullshit. So that's, yeah.
See, that's something that you bring up, Castro, is I guess when I was coming up, I guess I kind of had that similar mentality about the conquest, but I guess as I grew spiritually, by the time I was ready to have the talk with my boys, I felt like I was able to convey the value of womanhood, the value of that individual that you would potentially be intimate with, and I was able to use their mother because I valued her and put her on so much of a pedestal. I was able to use their mother as basically a teaching tool in how a woman should be valued because how we related to each other on a daily basis. And so I think that um, that was a key in the talk. And Brother Menard, you had mentioned something that spoke to me earlier about the talk being kind of a continual scenario. And I guess I never realized that I was actually doing that. But, I can think of a specific moment in time where, I just sat down, with the boys at such a young age, which I thought was premature, but I felt like I had no other choice. But one of the things that I was able to do in our talks was to teach them the value of a woman, and I think that was critical in that the women that they chose to marry seem to be phenomenal women. And, I don't know about their experiences, with women before they met their wives, but the women that they ultimately chose to say, I choose you, seem to be pretty good women. And I think that's one of the key issues that needs to be said regarding intimacy is the value of that woman that you're planning on being intimate with.
I'm glad, you guys said something, Eddie and Castro, and it's to me, it hits similarly, right? But one thing when we think about intimacy, everyone thinks the sexual intercourse aspect of it, right? But it's not just that. It's what you're doing with your significant other outside of the bedroom. What are you modeling? When your kids look at your relationship, is this something that they're going to say, yo, I want one just like that? Or are they going to say, I need to avoid that at all costs? You see what I'm saying? And so intimacy is not just the sexual aspect of it. It's also seeing them and kissing them hello, kissing them goodbye, giving them random hugs. Just like we would want to do that with our kids, give them hugs. But to translate that affection so they can see, no, this is how you treat your significant other. This is where it begins. Way before it enters into a bedroom, it starts with this. And once they understand that, you will even see it mimicked in the relationship that they have with the girls that they want to bring around you, that they want to bring around you. Now, there's a difference. We all know that there are women that you meet that you're just like, yeah, I'm not going to take you on the mom. But then there's those women that you meet that you're like, yeah, she's a keeper. I'm going to introduce you to people. And so you'll see that, when you're having those kind of conversations about intimacy, that's outside the bedroom first, which is how you treat the woman, how you speak to a woman, how the woman should be treating you, what qualities you should be looking for. Like everyone wants that, yeah, she has to look like this, act like this. But no, what is it that you need from them? Because we all need something from the person that we chose to make our wife, that we chose to make our, that when we decided you're the one I'm going to get engaged to. What is it that you needed? I know for me, it was support. Like if you can't support me and a dream that I have, I don't need you around me. Because I don't want to be stifled. I need someone who's going to be like, you can do this. I know you can do it. Just as much as I'm going to go and say, hey, this is what you want to do, go for it. You see what I'm saying? And it's that reciprocity. It's those things that start off that your kids are always going to see, because they will never see you, in the right household. They will never see you guys in the bedroom with your intimacy. You see what I'm saying? But they will see the intimacy you guys have when it comes to that relationship that you're in, when it comes to how you treat each other. And so that's where it first starts. So when, like when Castro is saying, he has nothing to contribute. Yeah, you did. When you said what you said about you and your wife and how she deals with it and how you're noticing it and how you're supporting it, that's what the kids are seeing. They're not seeing that button heads. So they know that that's a part of the relationship and that's a part of the intimacy that you guys share. You know, because romance comes, you know, like they say, you know, there's a joke that says, if you want to make love to a man, you just start him right there. If you want to make love to a woman, you got to start her in the morning. That way, by the time you get to see her at night, she's ready for it. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's that.
I think it's modeling the behavior.
Yeah.
Right. It's modeling what that looks like. I know that I am very cognizant of how my sons see how I argue and fight with my wife. Right. Because I don't hide that from them, and we don't hide that from them. We let them know that, hey, you know what? Mommy says some crazy things to daddy, and daddy's defending himself. And he can, and he should, and he'd be able to talk to, this is what it looks like. It's not an argument. It's not a fight. It's a healthy dialogue between two adults that love each other, are working it through, right? And that's to me, that's the birds and the bees. It's the finessing, right? If I could finesse you to stay with me, I could finesse you to be with me, right? And somehow, some way, I got you this far, right? And I think that's, as men, we forget how to instill that into our sons, right? Like you're carrying on my legacy, which is our birthright in a sense, right? So it's, if a woman, I think as men, part of this toxic masculinity that we contribute is that we act like women owe us some shit, right? And they don't owe us anything. If we're blessed, like, all, put everything in perspective. A woman chooses to birth our child because she can, by law, can do whatever she needs to, is her body, right? To a certain extent now. But if a woman's really willing to give you a child and bear your child, motherfucker, you got to give her that respect at bare minimum, right? And then model that behavior to that child, that this is your mother and you respect her as such, right? And I'm a firm believer of just modeling that behavior. And what does that look like, right? In all aspects, not just when we're happy, but when we're also in conflict, because you're still my wife and she's still your mother.
Well, I just want to, I don't mean to be a party pooper, but I always got to remind us that there are some people out here who are non-consensual fathers. And they're non-consensual fathers not because, I mean, when you said it, like, hey, you know, this and that person didn't, he didn't ask for it. So now he had, and I only say this because all the time is because people will hear us say these things and then they'll say, oh, you don't got to count. That don't count for me. So you're not talking. Yeah, we're talking to you as well. You just have to find out how you fit into that. You know, I can hear everything that Castro said, even though that's not the way I see it. You know, that's not the way I vision it. But I do know the most important part is my children are affected by what I do and don't do, regardless of how we got here. You know, we arrived at this place, and now we're trying to say, hey, you know, what's the deal with this? You know, you go back and say, well, you chose this person, they chose you. Well, I didn't choose them, but there ain't nothing I can do about where the chosen is now, because I choose my child. And if I'm going to choose my child, I got to find a way to choose to deal with their mother, because their mother's a part of them, just like the child's a part of me. And now that's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours of being able to understand, because there's a lot of what people believe in is trust. A lot of trust broke in, a lot. But again, we can use some of Doc Lionel's stuff. You don't got to trust. Try them. Just try to work within a realm for what the bigger cause is, as we always will say, and this always comes to be out. What is in the best benefit of your child? That goes for married, non-married, baby daddies, jump offs, 20-year marriages, grandkids. What is in the best interest of your children? Because what's in the best interest of them is the best interest of your legacy. And I hate to always bring it to that, but that's what the reality is, because there's a lot of men today who wish they would have took the best interest, because they have no legacy for anyone to know who they ever was.
But if
But Ron, I think when it comes to the just the true essence of intimacy is learning how to value a person's humanity more than you value their physicality, right?
Mm.
And I think in society, not just in American society, but as a world, a man's rites of passage is packaging the rites of pleasure more than the rites of passage. And so our rites of passage is a rites of pleasure. And when the rites of pleasure become your rites of passage, or a particular gender rites of passage, you understand? We can only be doomed to victimize as opposed to empathize and really become the men that our women need. And so our women can, because you think our women are something now, imagine if we were to actually become the men that they need. If they can function at this level being traumatized, I'm talking about right now as we speaking in 2022. If women can function at this level being traumatized, imagine if she was with a whole, or better yet, a healed, whole man, a man that contributes to the wholeness of that situation. And right now, women are still in the majority, I'm talking about around the world, most women are in relationships, functioning at probably 50% healing and 50% hurt. Nobody's really reached the wholeness of it's like they talk about our brain capacity. Well, that's how our intimacy capacity works. We probably can create miracles if we became the mates to each other that we were really called and created to be. But until that happened, and we keep on functioning the rites of pleasure and valuing the rites of pleasure more than we write as a rites of passage or dysfunctional rites of passage, then we'll continue to traumatize. And I don't care how you put it, you can't raise or have a triumphant child through a traumatized mom. This is why we keep them on the gladiator field, trying to make them gladiators and warriors that their household circumstances may not actually cultivate.
Hey, that needs to be the tagline right there. You cannot make a triumphant child for a traumatized mom. That's
Well, I add on to that. You can't make a triumphant child with a traumatized parent at all, because we sometimes continue to fall into this narrative that, oh well, if mom traumatized, dad can be whatever, and the kid gonna come out great. A mom, but it doesn't happen. We do. Listen, many of us are raised by mothers, right? And so we turn to a narrative to say, look, we good, man. I'm good at everything. But if we really evaluate, and me and my dad we drove recently and we had a lot of conversations about this conversation of the things that you don't know that you missed until you can realize them. Like the relationship me and him have now, the things we can talk about. We weren't able to talk about. I mean, he was where he was. I was with my mom, whatever. Stepdads, I tried them, but they was there as models, but not my heart going to them in certain ways. But many of us continue our whole life never even knowing that experience and never knowing what we missed. So that whole thing, oh, you never know, no matter what you don't know, you don't. But that's not true, because you're talking about being a whole human being. You want all of abundant of life. If I told you could get there was $1 million out there, but I'm just gonna give you 25. There's a whole $1 million out there. Nobody will say, oh yeah, I just settled for the 25. You're gonna want all $1 million of it. And that's what we should also be looking for. And remember, that's what our children should get for their whole life, the whole $1 million. Not just 50,000, 500,000. They should get a whole 100 million, not 100 million, but $1 million.
Society doesn't allow for you to go get your 100 mil or your one, whatever it is, because they have a higher value on you not being around. There's a higher value for you as a man not to insert your influence on these young children, because you are creating leaders.
Brothers, I'm as we get ready to close, I just want to say that I got a call today, and we're going to talk a little bit more intense about this tomorrow. Call for one of our fathers, and he told me that he had finally went to court, and he said the judge, and I almost, hey, Rohan, you know, I heard of Judge Shears.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, you know him, don't you? Yeah, we know him pretty well.
It's a him.
Yeah,
It's a him or her?
It's a him.
Sheer. Okay, go on. I'll go sing up the female. Go ahead.
Yeah, look him up.
I can go.
But he told our young person that he had been paying the mom money for all of this, you know, before he was 18. He had been paying the mom. His mom was, and they was giving money to the other family.
Right.
And he told them that I ain't counting none of that. I'm only gonna count the money since you've been 18. That's the type of stuff that doesn't help. And he was like, well, why should I even pay money now? Because he's not gonna, and I said, that's the trick. He wants you to stop paying money right now. So he'll say later that you're not doing it. If you was a kid and you was paying money before you was an adult, why wouldn't you continue to pay it as an adult unless somebody put a block in your way to try to stop you from doing that? And most of the time we fall for it without the guidance. I said, listen, keep making your checks out and keep paying them. And once you get a lawyer, your lawyer will be able to work. But just what Castro was saying, the system, and it's not sometimes even the mom, that wasn't the mom doing. Listen, that wasn't the mom. That wasn't the mom did that. That was a judge who made a judgment, subjective judgment to say, oh, I'm not counting the young money that you gave. I want your old money to prove that you're a father, that you've been a father to your kid. And that's a rough thing, guys. And so when you look at these fathers who don't listen, I tell fathers all the time, when you got the ability to be with your kids, be with them. Because there's some guys out here who wish they could. They wish they could even touch, they wish the mom would call and say, could you come pick this joker up? The mom calling you, blowing your phone up. You keep giving her excuses. You keep telling her, I can't come right now, I got to do that. There's some people out here just wish they could even get a call. So anyway, and I almost got into the little stupid there, because this is, listen, you know, I mean, I said this is the reason why we had the show. It's a lot of stuff, and I know we shared a lot of good things, and I hope people learned and inspired you to go have a conversation with your kids. Begin to even have a conversation with your partner on how you're gonna have this conversation with your kids, because that's what we really, you know, if you had to take something away from today, is that first you got to start having a conversation with yourself, then a conversation with your partner to have this conversation with your kids. Yeah, it's not something that I know it already. Hey, put it in, take it out, make sure you put a condom on so you don't get nothing inside. That's not a conversation, Doc. That sounds good, but that's not teaching your kid anything other than some of that coercive behavior, you know, that we're talking about. So, guys, it's been a great night. We right on time to get out of here. Anybody want to say anything else before we get out of here? Before we close out?
Ron, I want to say something real quick to you, to all fathers here. This conversation regarding speaking to your child about the birds and the bees, so to speak, is very important. Many of us fathers, or many people tend to put this in the dark. So we tend to speak about things in the light, but sometimes we got to speak about things in the dark. And it is imperative, it is extremely important that you have these conversations with your children. Like, you know, man, even your grandkids, man. Because guess what? Some of us have our grandkids in the house, and the son ain't saying much, or the mom ain't saying much. If it comes up as a grandfather, you can talk to. That's what I gotta say.
Okay, one thing I want to ask you guys, so to give me some advice. Actually, I have like 3 boys and 1 girl, and she's 12 years old. The youngest one from the boy is 9 years old. She more want to have a conversation with her mother than me. And sometimes she just feel like, it's more comfortable with her mother. So why is that? So I just want to ask some question because something was like last week, something was going on with with them. Actually, I was having a meeting with them every Thursday, and we have a family meeting. We pray together and we do things together. We fellowship everything. And I tell everybody, if you have something in your heart you wanna say. And if somebody abuse you from school, wherever, and your big brother, everything, so just say. And she feel like, my mom. Sometimes I'm more closer to my mom because I feel like my mom loves me more than my dad. I
Well,
just talk, and I just wanna ask you guys for some advice.
hey, you're now. It might not be
Yeah.
that it's not so much that she might feel like her mom loves her more. Her mom is the same as her. And you know what? One thing you didn't think about that happens is that y'all get together and she by herself. If you running those sessions with the kids, who's there? You, the kid, the boys, and her. So she's looking for. So one thing I would suggest to you is all conversations with all the kids. Try to get you and the mom to do them together. Because what's happening is she's feeling like you have, and you have more advantage fathering skills to give sometimes to your boys because you know what they face, and mom has mothering skills being a woman, but both of those skills are needed for both genders, father skills and mother skills. But you got to look at, I think that when you look at you describe it's 4 of y'all and 1 of her. And if mom ain't there, she, it almost like how we see the what happens in school. They got 1 black kid in the class, all the white kids. I guess what's gonna happen? That black kid gonna be failing his behind. He ain't getting nothing done. He about to get cut out of the classroom, so they ain't even have to worry about it. And that's where it kind of plays. So I think about that. That's one suggestion I have for you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I don't have daughters, but I would kind of go off of what Ron was saying. Separate her from the boys and have that father and daughter moment with her.
All right, good.
And connect with her directly on her level on what she needs, and just ask questions that invite her to be open, and you just listen. You don't judge. You create the space for her to just be her genuine self by just creating that space where it's a bond between you and her. Even take it out the house. Just take her somewhere else and it's just you and her. And she sees how her daddy caters to her. That starts wiring her brain how she wants to be catered by other boys or other men.
Thank you.
And I would add to that, don't force it. A lot of times we want to have a relationship and we try to force ourselves, and that tends to push the kids away because I think by her saying what she said, it opened the air of her being able to be honest about how she feels, right? So her saying that I feel closer to my mom than you, it's not really a negative thing. It's just her and how she sees everything, like Ron was saying. So I think that in there, when you are having conversations with her and you are talking to her, don't make it an interrogation.
Right.
You got to just leave it open-ended. Like, what did you do today? And just let her talk. Because a lot of times you'll find women are more talkative. So it could just be just as simple as mom talks to me more, so she loves me more. And it could just be that simple.
And you know what? One other
Thank
thing
you.
that you could, one other thing you know, and I'll throw this one really quick thing out there is you can ask her if she go to sleep in the morning and daddy could be any way that she want daddy to be and daddy would do those things. Ask her what would that be and get her to tell you what she would want for you to do and how you would want her to be with you. Because now you're not dictating it. You're letting her examine what it is because she could have said, I don't feel that way. But now she got to think about what she wants dad to be and how she wants dad to be with her. And then now you can move from there because you have the means to be able to do what she's asking and what she wants to see happen. But it's not coming from you dictating it, it's coming from her kind of being the catalyst of it. So think about that. That's another little thing. Write that down in your book. Ask her, what is, maybe let me ask you, what would you want dad to be? How would you want dad to interact and what you want dad to do different from the, even to say different from the boys? Because that might be a bigger point. She might just say, you just lumped us all together. I need more than that, daddy.
Mhm. Ron, real quick, couple things. What you can do is have you done a plan where you take your daughter, father, date and take her out on a date
No.
where you and her can be able to talk. Also, like what Robert was saying, when you're talking to her, don't let it just be a yes and no when you question that you're asking. Open it up so that she would have to really talk to you and not, yeah, no, open it up so that you be able to receive something as well as give her something in your communication.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, that's another thing we try to do. Make sure we, and that's the purpose of this. This is the real purpose of this, for us to be able to help fathers kind of, manage some things. Because again, we talk about a father who, Yornell is saying, meet with his kids, he praying with them, he doing the whole system with them. But even in that, there's something else he's concerned that he needs to do some other. Not do more, but do some other ways or do some things differently. And that's what we talk about. And that's what Fatherhood Talks is really about. Helping fathers not be better fathers, be worse fathers, or do this, but have a community that they can come to talk about things that are affecting them as fathers. And ultimately in that conversation, they can go out with the light. They get that light from the team and go out and beam it to their family. So I'm getting carried away, starting to think about Black Panther coming soon. So we will see you guys here tomorrow night for any fathers who want to join. Just look in the chat. You'll be able to see down in the chat that the Zoom link. We start at 6:30 tomorrow night in our private Zoom for fathers only. And we'll be there. We'll talk about some of these topics, but we'll probably talk about. I know what I probably gonna be pushing the conversation to a little bit because I'm a little disturbed, but I'll say that for tomorrow. And we hope to see you and join. If not, join us here again next Tuesday at 7:00 for Fatherhood Talks. Fathers, repeat after me. I am a man of honor.
I am a man of honor.
I am a man of courage.
I am
a man of courage.
I am a man of respect.
I am a man of respect.
Hey, fathers, I said that I am. I said that you are.
You are.
Say that we are.
We are.
Championship. When you see us doing the flex, it's not that we flexing because we masculine and machismo. It's us holding our children under our arms and our families on our backs. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see y'all here again next week. Remember, like, Like, share, and subscribe. Fatherhood Talks. Good night.
One